Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today, we are going to go over some great topics that we did over at Netroots Nation 2018. These were some great interviews with some great people, some luminaries that many of you know. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Madea Benjamin. Madea Benjamin is, I believe, the president of CODEPINK. CODEPINK is that organization that raises hell on Capitol Hill. Every time you have those hearings and you see those women dressed in pink and, well, usually they don't dress in pink because what they're trying to do is conceal themselves until they get out and do an official, well-targeted protest at Capitol Hill. You saw them do it with the Justice Kavanaugh. You saw them do it with Justice, the other one that got placed in. But these are some warriors, and she was out there and she gave a great interview that all of us need to see, that all of us need to work on. But anyway, before I get to it, the program, I want to remind all of you what I ask you to do all of the times when we start the program, and that is, folks, please go ahead and be sure to share. It is imperative that we share these programs. Why? Because that is the only way we move forward. That is the only way that we can get the progressive message out. If we don't, the corporatocracy is not going to do it for you. You know, a lot of people are saying, what corporatocracy? What are you talking about? Well, folks, there are forces out there that are intent. There are forces out there that are intent in ensuring, maintaining the status quo, maintaining that people remain fairly ignorant to how our system really works. And it is our job, it is our goal to make sure that that isn't the case. So please, if you're just joining us, please share the program on your wall, on your Twitter, on your Tumblr, everywhere else. Let me tell you one other thing. We're going to have a set change. We're working on it. Just went ahead and made some changes to the Wirecast software. It's about configuring it so that we get something that is more pleasing to the eye. But I tell you what, without any further ado, first of all, let me tell you a little bit of the program. The title of the program today is TPP, Basic Income, Iran, Marijuana, Liberals Winning Conservative Areas, and more. And a subtitle, today's PDR includes previously unreleased interviews from Netroots Nation with experts on TPP, Basic Income, Iran. We also talk about how progressives can win in conservative districts. Anyhow, I interviewed north of 50 people back at Netroots Nation. North of 50 people. That's how many folks sat down there and interviewed out there. I think I did a total of 45 or 48 interviews. I don't remember how many of those they were. But anyway, I'm sure you'll find them enlightening and informing. Madea Benjamin, co-director of CODEPINK, Women for Peace, and author of the new book, Inside Iran. Jasmine Gates, training associate with Progressive Change Campaign Committee. She's a powerhouse that is really out there training progressives on how they need to get the job done. We also have Lori Wallach, who is the director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. She's one of the persons most responsible for informing people about TPP. I've interviewed her several years before. She's been working on this TPP thing for a long time. Now, if you take a look at citizens.org, that is where a lot of her work can be found. John Atlas is the author of the book Seeds of Change that inspired the film Acorn and the firestorm that revealed the tragic true inside stories. It just shows you how dirty the Republicans play when it comes to voting, and the same kind of voter suppression that is occurring right now, that we're seeing right now in America, is the same thing they've been doing for years. They've been setting up traps, all that sort of thing. Acorn shouldn't have been placed out of business, but they are. Then we have Angelina Lawson, an independent scholar. His name is Stephen Shafarman. He's going to be discussing basic income. We also have Angelina Lawson, She proved that a progressive values could actually win in a conservative area. We also have Deaven, Rector, who is with DC Vote. He will discuss the youth involvement in our politics and more. And Chris Savage, the founder of Eclecta Blog. I hope I can get to Chris. What I'm going to do is shut up and go ahead and start getting those programs to us now so that we can actually get on with the program. So here is whom. Here you can listen to Madea Benjamin and what she has to say. Well, we are back. This is Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies. And who came by our little show here but Madea Benjamin, co-director of CODEPINK, and now the author of the new book called
Inside Iran, the real politics and history of the Islamic Republic.
Now, how have you been doing, Madea?
Well, you know, when people get asked those questions now, you got to think, are they talking about, like, how am I doing with the political situation that's going on in the country and the world? Terrible. How am I doing personally? I'm doing great. So somewhere in between
Somewhere
that
in
is
between.
so-so.
I love the way you answered that. But anyway, so what have you been up to lately? You were at KPFT, I think, a few months ago with actually, how long ago was that?
It was about a year ago.
About a year ago.
Yeah. I had done a book on Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And when I did the research on Saudi Arabia, it kept coming up about the conflict with Iran, which made me feel like I had to do a book on Iran. And so I did. And these are like basic primer type books
Right.
to teach people sort of the 1,000 questions you might have had on Iran, and now you're going to get them answered. So the book on Iran, I also knew that when Trump was going around on the campaign trail, he was saying, this is the worst deal ever, the one that
Right.
that Obama signed. Of course, he wanted to undo anything that Obama had
so
done.
he sure did.
And sure enough, he came into power and he tore up that Iran deal, which is very dangerous. And so I feel like, you know, the book is a vehicle to go around and talk to people and say, we let this happen before around Iraq. And it's happening the exact same playbook all over again. Are we going to let it happen another time?
And, you know, the answer is that we're not going to let it happen another time, because that's why you are out here. That's why you're out there in the field. That's why you wrote the book. And, folks, you can get the book at
CODEPINK.org.
CODEPINK.org. Is it also sold online anywhere else?
It's online, and you can certainly get it even cheaper on Amazon.
I saw the look when you said that. I saw the look, Madea. I saw the look. But anyhow, tell us, what's your impression of where we're at in the body politic right now?
I feel like there is so much confusion that people have around where we're going. There's among progressives,
Right.
obviously a real disgust about Donald Trump, but also around the mainstream Democratic Party as well. So I feel like the progressives in the Democratic Party and then outside the Democratic Party are pushing for a real agenda that says we want Medicare for all, we want free college education, we want the basic things that social democracies have around the world.
ICE.
Yeah, abolish ICE. And we want a country where we feel proud of our foreign policy as well, which means we don't want to go invading and occupying other countries. But I think from the work that I do, it's really been hard to get the bandwidth to talk about foreign policy because there's just so much being thrown at us that people are dealing with every day in their lives that they don't have the time to think about
Madea,
it.
you are so smart in realizing that. In fact, that is not by accident, that is by design.
Exactly.
In other words, all this crap that the media decides to follow about a tweet, all the crap that they decide to follow about all these other issues is just a method of distraction. The military-industrial complex is re-engineering a war.
That's right.
It is, and the idea here is this, however. What you're doing is great. What we're doing through our independent media is also great. What we are starting to do is tell the story not as a foreign policy story, but a how to move America forward story, how to help individuals. And in so doing, we can make the foreign policy question.
But you know, I also think it's important for us to be educating people in the progressive world to say that if we keep giving to the Pentagon over $700 billion
Yes.
of our taxes, we're not going to have money for health care for all. We're not going to have money for fixing our infrastructure or for building a green economy. We've got to address the issue of being in the grip,
Right,
strangled by the military-industrial complex. You do know that half of that money that we give to the Pentagon turns around and goes to weapons manufacturers.
Absolutely so.
Absolutely.
But you know what? We have to find a way for people to understand that. Is it bread or is it a missile that either is going to be used or destroyed for the next model?
Just like President Eisenhower told us in 1961 about beware of the power of the military-industrial complex, that it's robbing food from our children.
And that's the context we have to keep it in.
Yes.
You see, a lot of times in the past, we've just made it an intellectual argument. Now, the argument that you're making is the argument what we have to make.
But can I also say something else,
Yes.
which is I think this obsession with talking about Russia has so narrowed the scope of what
Yes.
we're looking at and what we're talking about. And when it comes to foreign policy issues, I think it's very dangerous creating this hatred for Russia in this
Right.
country, because we don't want to go to war with another nuclear
No, we
state
don't.
like Russia. And it is crowding out any discussion of other important things. For example, on the foreign policy issue, how many people in the United States have any idea about the largest human catastrophe in the world today, which is what's happening in Yemen?
Yes,
They
nobody
don't.
knows.
They don't. And then on top of that, to know that we in the U.S. are so responsible for the bombing campaign that's going on,
Saudi Arabia
creating it,
on
by
them, yes,
the weapons we're selling to
Yes,
Saudi Arabia,
right.
the logistical support, the diplomatic cover, all of that. And so you don't hear a thing, even on the, quote, progressive MSNBC. They haven't talked for a year about what is
You know why
happening
that
in
is?
Yemen.
Because again, it's the same reason that you had me on your podcast, and I said the reason why you want to support a Pacifica network or one of these networks is because we owe nothing to the corporatocracy. MSNBC may be a liberal station, it ain't a progressive station. It's a liberal station that can go so far. The story about the rails, Madea, there's a left rail and a right rail. What's interesting is that they're both going in the same direction. So what's the difference?
Absolutely. And I just want your listeners and your viewers to pay a little bit more attention to what's not being talked about and on foreign policy issues, because we have a disaster already of 7 countries that we're involved in militarily, hundreds of countries we're involved in with special operations, over 700 bases overseas that should all be closed down, just like we're saying abolish ICE. Abolish foreign military bases.
Thank you.
We don't need them.
Thank you.
On the contrary, they make us hated in many of the countries where they are, and it's taking money away from all the things that we need at home. And then lastly, I just want to also reiterate on this Iran issue, if you support the rights of people for self-determination, we've got to support the rights of Iranians to determine the direction of their own country and stop the U.S. from trying to interfere with their internal affairs and create the kind of chaotic situation in Iran that we're seeing in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, etc. So we got to stop the next war now.
Now go ahead and tell us about your book again.
The book is called Inside Iran. It's a basic primer about Iran, U.S.-Iranian relations, and you can get it on the CODEPINK.org website. And it's important to read and understand where the powers that be are, the direction they're heading, which is a chaotic situation to make things even worse in the Middle East, instead of the opposite. We should have diplomatic and trade relations with Iran. We should work with them to help unravel the mess that's going on all over the Middle East.
Madea Benjamin, co-director of CODEPINK. Thank you so kindly for having been with Politics. Well, that was Madea from CODEPINK. When at Netroots, I met this young woman. She had so much energy. She was training progressive candidates and people in the progressive sphere how to be real progressives and win. So I had to talk to her, and this is what she had to say. She was pretty much on cue with all the things that progressives need to know. It's a short interview, but she did very well. We are back with Politics Done Right. This is Egberto Willies, and I'm here with Jasmine Gales. And Jasmine, who are you with?
I'm with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee.
Now, Jasmine, what do you do?
So I am the training associate. Basically, my organization trains candidates and endorses them. So I am in charge of making sure that we have recruited progressive candidates from across the nation to attend our trainings to receive our great resources.
Now, what kind of training do you provide?
Yeah, so we provide candidate trainings. Our thing is we basically will cover the A to Z's and the nuts and bolts of running for office. Give those tools to grassroots organizing and working class folks who want to make their voices heard in office.
Now, what you're saying is that you support progressive values. So my question to you, because as you know, you're with a very progressive organization here at Netroots Nation. Specifically, what progressive issues do you support and do you actually push for?
Yeah, so we function off an economic populist agenda. We believe that Medicare should be for all. We believe that Social Security should be expanded, that Wall Street reform should happen, and that debt-free college should be an option for all students.
Now, is that do you train your candidates on the nuts and bolts on those issues so that they can present it into a form that the average American citizen can understand?
For sure. So at our national candidate training, which is a training that we have once a year in D.C., it's a 4-day training, and we bring candidates up and train them. We talk about the actual strategies and the logistics of running, but we also do have panels and discussions on the issues to make sure that candidates can have talking points when they're talking to voters or the media or to other organizations about how they should come into the fold of supporting that and making it an ingrained thing of a part of their base.
Now, how are you funded?
So we are a million-member grassroots base. Our members are working class folks who send in $3 to $5 small donations every time they get paid. And so that basically is the foundation of our work. So we're very intentional about communicating with our members, whether it's campaigns that will affect them, whether it's candidates in their area who stand for the issues that they want to see change in. And they ultimately put money into our ecosystem, and we ultimately get candidates elected that.
So do they sort of subscribe to you, or do they just donate on a single basis?
Yeah, so we kind of function off of they buy in from our email list.
Right.
So we have a huge email list. We send out a monthly newsletter saying these are the issues, these are the candidates. If you'd like to donate, you can donate here. We do have recurring donations, but for the most part, it's folks going in, logging in, typing in their amount every time they get paid and sending it that way.
Now, how can people reach you?
Yeah, so you can contact us at boldprogressives.org. There's our website. You can see the candidates that we've endorsed this year, our campaign services, and also learn a little bit more about our issues.
I didn't know you were part of Bold Progressives.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know you're the director.
Yeah, Adam Green, Stephanie Taylor. Yes.
Yeah,
it's an amazing organization doing great work.
Absolutely. So keep up doing the great work that you guys are doing, and thank you so kindly for having been here.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
You take care now.
Yeah.
Okay, that of course was Jasmine Gales making sure progressives know how to campaign, making sure training progressives on how they need to do things. The next person here is Laura Wallach. Laura Wallach, I met Laura several years ago. She is one of the people that are doing she's the one telling folks exactly how these trade deals are really working. You don't get the spin that you get on TV. She's straightforward. She's been on MSNBC several times, ABC and all the other channels. She's known as one of the experts in understanding exactly how TPP works, understanding how all these different things work. She doesn't allow the fine print to get in her way at all. I had a bit of mic problems on my side, but everything on her side came out perfectly well. But check her out. Welcome back to Politics Done Right. This is Egberto Willies, and I'm here with Lori Wallach, and Lori is
with Public Citizens Global Trade Watch.
Absolutely. So you're the director, aren't you?
I am.
You're the. So she was kind of a little kind in not saying that, but you are the director. Look, you must be very, very happy. Trump came into office, and not only did he come into office, he killed PPP, didn't he?
Well, I'm not happy about Trump being in office, and he didn't kill the TPP.
Tell us a little bit about that, because you know I'm teasing right now, but this is a very serious issue. So tell us exactly what's going on in the world of trade, in the world of... first, let's talk a little bit about TPP, then we can extend that on to NAFTA and what's going on.
So Trump got to box and bury the moldering corpse of the TPP.
Tell me, what does that mean?
And that means that thanks to actually progressives in the U.S. and labor unionists busting their butts, educating the public, educating their members of Congress, that dangerous trade agreement could not have a majority in Congress from the time it was signed through the entire rest of the Congress. So it was DOA in Congress. And by the way, that outcome is to no small part attributable to our brothers and sisters in the international campaign in Vietnam and in Chile and in New Zealand and in Peru, who actually delayed the deal getting cut by fighting back with their government so that we had the time to educate our legislators, the public, and our legislators here. So that was a huge international campaign, and the progressives won. Trump tried to get credit, but basically he sort of put a stick in something that was already dead and planted his flag on it.
Now, I spoke to you about, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, as I told you before, was from an emergency room with a friend having a heart attack. Now, interesting enough, then you said you didn't think it was going to pass. And by God, guess what? It didn't pass.
That's right. And in fact, at the time we said that, people said, that's absurd. There's no way you guys can win. That's not doable. And then, in fact, we had built the majority.
Actually, you proved that it was doable.
It's doable.
So anyhow, explain to me where are we at in the TPP space right now? In other words, where are we? Because the reality is, okay, so suppose that Trump killed this deal. You're telling me, well, there's a lot more to it. Tell me, where are we? Where can we tell the audience that TPP is, and what should they be doing right now?
So the bad news is the other countries that were in TPP made a bunch of changes, and then they implemented. They took out some really outrageous stuff the U.S. had insisted, but they've started to implement. So as far as the TPP itself, other countries have signed up to it. Here's the good news. The corporate lobby that we beat in stopping the TPP, they said, geez, we can't be left out of that. Let's figure out a sideways way to get in. Boy, Trump said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Why don't we get them to make that TPP 2.0? We'll just sneak the same bad stuff that was in TPP into that NAFTA and sideways like a crab, walk ourselves back into the TPP.
But would that only cover Canada and Mexico?
Well, the idea was if you could get the U.S. to agree to those rules, then you could get the U.S. to say, well, why aren't you doing, if you're going to do those rules or the TPP rules with Mexico and Canada, why don't you just get back into the whole deal and get the benefit?
Because I think by killing TPP, don't we have time before it really is, we're really out? Something like with the Paris Agreement, where in as much as...
Because we never approved it. We never were in it.
Right.
So there is a big debate about what should be the direction of the NAFTA renegotiation. And they finally did start NAFTA renegotiation, and they started it 1 year ago, almost now, in August. And they're now coming to a close on it. And here's like the shocker. People should put down hot beverages, or I think it'd be dangerous if you hurl them. So it comes to pass that while the Chamber of Commerce and the Republicans in Congress have been trying to get them to do the TPP style stuff in the NAFTA renegotiation, the guy Trump actually appointed as the chief trade guy is a guy who has had more in common with the unions, with the Democrats in Congress on trade, than with the chamber. He is the odd man out in that administration.
Let me stop you a second. You're saying Trump appointed him?
Yes, and he's, progressive Senator Sherrod Brown.
Right. Yes, I do.
Sherrod Brown on Face the Nation said, he's the best cabinet official. He said, let me correct myself. He's the only good cabinet official.
So he said that. He believed
this guy,
him.
His name is Robert Lighthizer. He's worked with unions. He's worked with Democrats in Congress. And he's a guy who's all about basically trying to change the old trade model in ways that there is about 65% overlap with progressives. So here is what the moment of truth is upon us. We will in short order know if NAFTA has been changed to get rid of the outsourcing incentives at its heart, those outrageous corporate tribunals, the investor state tribunals.
That is the one where I believe they have power over the politicians. If something happens and the corporation loses the ability to execute within your land.
And so you could have unlimited sums being ordered by tribunals of 3 corporate attorneys.
That taxpayers will
have to pay
for what profit they claim to have lost.
Unlimited future profits.
Unlimited
Spot
future
on.
Profits, right.
Any kind of domestic law that they think is a violation of their NAFTA rights. And this is in place right now. $400 million been paid out in ISDS attacks.
The U.S. taxpayers have already paid in...
all through North America.
Really?
Environment, timber policies, water policies, toxic bans, energy policies, Mexico, Canada.
I didn't realize that we actually, I know we
NAFTA,
had some policies. Yeah, wow. Okay.
Under NAFTA.
Okay.
So shocker, they may take out those corporate tribunals and shut down that ongoing damage.
Right.
They may take out the outsourcing incentives, shut down.
That
I mean,
damage, right.
we've lost 960,000 officially
right.
certified NAFTA
Right,
casualties, and it's ongoing every week.
Right.
And then the big question is, will they put in labor standards to raise wages? And you would say with these people,
important.
you would say with these people, the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is, this trade representative is so focused on outsourcing that he
Right.
realizes low wages in Mexico, which are down
Yes.
since NAFTA, down $2 an hour for manufacturing, are a pull factor.
Right.
So he realizes he has to take the investor protection push factor out, and another push factor is a ban on Buy American.
Right.
So like GE gets millions of dollars of contracts now, and they can make the stuff in a lower wage venue like Mexico.
And then just import it in, yeah.
So they have to take those push factors out, get rid of the pull factor of low wages, and then they might change the dynamic. So folks should sign up to get alerts
Right.
at www.replacenafta.org.
Repeat that again for the audience.
Replacenafta.org.
Excellent.
It is where we're going to be broadcasting out through the action alert system. If you get onto that list,
Right.
whether or not the unions say the labor standards are fixed, Elizabeth Warren and other progressives say the ISDS thing is fixed, we'll be letting folks know, has a unicorn wandered out of these very dangerous woods of the Trump administration, and instead of us reflexively saying, Trump did something, shoot at it, we should say, unicorn, stand by, ceasefire, unicorn, let us snuggle it into our bosom. This may be the only good thing that ever comes out of this administration, even if it's by damn accident.
Yeah, which it is. But I mean, in fact, I was about to tell you again, oh my God, you mean he appointed a good guy, he shut down the TPP, and, well, you know what is, oh my God.
He didn't restart it. So Trump doesn't really get credit for this because
Right.
ultimately what the Republicans are for
Right.
is the opposite. He's basically appropriated the Democrats' critique on trade, and he appropriated the Democrats' remedies.
Right.
And the thing that's going to be interesting in the midterms is if he ends up doing something like this, and the Democrats say, oh, you're doing the thing we've been saying for all these years, but can you get any Republicans to vote for it and
Right.
actually pass it, Mr. Republican President? It could be a real wedge issue where you basically have
Yes.
visually that these Republicans in Congress are against the NAFTA fix that could stop outsourcing.
Right.
Even if their own scary president's doing it, but the Democrats are so intent on saving jobs and raising wages that they will actually vote for the thing they've asked for, even if it happens during the Trump administration. And that's a great wedge issue.
And it's interesting because then we keep a Democratic Congress and he gets reelected.
Well, it's hard to know if he gets reelected because here's the sad
Yeah.
thing. Like his tax scam has so many deep incentives for job outsourcing
Right.
that even if you fix this NAFTA job outsourcing
That's a
thing,
problem.
it's like it would be like fixing the NAFTA job outsourcing thing is fixing a failed dam,
Right.
which is flooding you and can drown you. But the problem is what he did with the tax scam is inviting in a tsunami.
No.
So even if you fix the dam, you're inviting yourself to get drowned no matter what. But a Democrat who's a progressive could fix the tax scam, who will
And-
have delivered the NAFTA change, and then
repeal.
exactly.
Then repeal the tax cut scam.
That's right.
You know, I mean, you've been working at this for a long time, and you've been putting this in simple words for people for a long time. I want to tell you to keep up doing the job because, again, when I interviewed you 3 years or so ago, I learned a whole lot. I followed then, I haven't in a while, the website at citizens.org, I think it's at.
Yep.
Don't forget that, folks, citizens.org, and you have your own section where you have all these papers that are written.
You can go fast at tradewatch.org, and what's better is
Tradewatch.org, folks, yeah.
we've got a trade data center where now you can put in your zip code. You can see the jobs outsourced under NAFTA
I
directly
love
by your
that.
zip code.
I love that.
We've got fact sheets that tell you what's happened in Mexico, in
Right.
Canada, in the U.S., so you realize it's an international downer
Well,
for
Lori, let me tell you
workers.
something better. You still have to be out there everywhere because it's hard enough getting people to read a page. Reading all these pages is difficult. Coming to them and telling them and explaining that to them in the way that you do it is what's important. Lori Wallach, it's been a
Thank you
pleasure
very
speaking
much.
to you as usual,
Thank you
and
very
thank you
much.
again for what you're doing. Let's keep. Okay, folks, that was Lori. Now, she is an expert on trade, all the different trade treaties that the United States signs. Okay, our next person is Shafarman. He's going to discuss basic income, and a lot of people don't understand it. I think after listening to him, it'll be quite, folks, you'll get exactly what this basic income thing is all about. So let's Well, welcome back to Politics Done Right. We have another guest today that's going to be discussing a very important topic. We're here with the author of the book, Basic Income Imperative for Peace, Justice, Liberty, and Personal Dignity. We are here with El Señor Stephen Shafarman. How are
Good
you
morning.
doing today, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing very well.
First of all, let's start the conversation simply by asking, because a lot of people don't understand what the word basic income means. They believe it's sort of a giveaway, and both of us know that that is exactly not the case. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what basic income really is?
Great. It's actually a very simple idea, and its origins go back to Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and others among the founders, saying that everyone as a right should have at least an income for food, clothes, and shelter. So in the early versions from Thomas Jefferson, they talked about land, but Thomas Paine talked about cash. And the simple idea is that we would set some amount, maybe it's $500 or $800 or $1,000 a month, and give that to every adult citizen universally, unconditionally.
Now, for those who continue to believe that that is a giveaway, I know that you said it has its inception from some of our founders. However, that said, in today's climate, anytime you're given something from the government, people have a tendency to believe it's a giveaway. We both know it's a necessity to keep the type of capitalistic economy or any kind of an economy with money circulating and not simply going what naturally happens to the top.
Well, the core idea is that everyone needs at least some income in order to participate in markets and to participate in democracy.
Right.
And so it creates a floor below which people cannot fall, a solid, sturdy floor with no holes, no loopholes, no cracks. And that way people can use the money to start businesses or to raise their kids or to plan for retirement or be full-time artists or activists as they choose.
For those who say that that dampens the incentive for people to go out there and work, for people to produce, how do you answer that?
The true work ethic is motivated by meaningful work and by a desire to participate in society. And what we have today is a corrupted version that I call the coercion ethic, saying that if you want people to work, you have to beat them down and abuse them and punish them and take away what they have. And that simply isn't true, and it doesn't apply.
Well, I think personally both of us are doing things that we don't necessarily have to do. We do it because we want to do it. And if it's productive, we make a few bucks on it.
Well, and the idea, again, with basic income is to create an absolute floor so that people can pursue meaningful work, find ways to contribute to society, and if they choose, can work 80 or 100 hours a week to start businesses and try to make millions of dollars.
Now, you are working with some organizations. In fact, you are, I think you're in the leadership council of one of these organizations.
Yeah, we have
this, right?
There are a number of groups working on this. It's actually becoming a mainstream idea again after having been neglected for decades. So we have a group called the U.S. Basic Income Guarantee Network, was founded in 2000, and I've been on the coordinating committee for a long time. There's also an international group, the Basic Income Earth Network, that holds conferences regularly and has been very effective in promoting these ideas in Europe and around the world.
Now, I believe there's a Scandinavian country that has
Finland.
done a test case.
Finland did a small pilot project. It actually went very well. They got some publicity recently because they decided not to extend it.
And why is it because of the right-wing takeover? Why they didn't extend it, or is it because of the functionality?
It's partly from right-wing politics,
That's
and
what
it's
I thought.
also because of the way the program was designed. Finland is very different from the United States.
Right.
In fact, all the European countries and Canada and the other developed countries are very different from the U.S. because they have a real social safety net.
Exactly.
And what their experiment was designed to do was to give people below the poverty line a bit of extra money to see how well they used it.
And that is interesting because you made an interesting statement earlier when you said that The real work ethic is work that people really want to do. And if you have a floor back in Finland and England and all these other places where they have basic health care and where they can't go bankrupt for the basic needs, then that additional push that you may have on folks, just maybe they don't want it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it defeats the purpose to use that as a basis of our experiment, if you will.
Right. And there have actually been widespread experiments with basic income here in the U.S. in the 70s, in Canada, and in many other countries. And all of them have shown that even the extremely poor use the money responsibly and make good decisions. In the most publicized experiments here in the U.S., 8,500 people around the country in rural, urban, and suburban areas were given a guaranteed income for a period of time, and the research showed that people used the money responsibly. There was a slight decline in total work hours, but when they dug into the details, it was because wives chose to stay home with their kids instead of taking jobs, and teens stayed in school or went back to school instead of immediately seeking jobs, and men, who at the time were the major earners in the families, a slight percentage left bad jobs and were temporarily out of work while seeking better jobs.
Stephen, tell us a little bit about your book and tell the folks how they can find it.
Basic Income Imperative is available on Amazon, and there are a number of books about basic income. It's starting to get a lot of attention. Most of them, though, are in the conventional semi-scholarly academic journalistic style. There have been actually 4 books I know of just in the past 6 months come out with major publishers. My book is different because I really wrote it for regular folks to empower people as activists on this issue. And so there's nothing journalistic about it. In fact, the only place I write as myself is in the introduction and the afterword. And the rest of the book is speaking directly to the author, to the reader, in a kind of Socratic dialogue, saying, what would it mean for you if you knew that you had a basic income of, say, $1,000 a month, and if you knew that your friends and spouse and other family members had a basic income? How would that help you make good decisions regarding job or career or education? What would you do with the money? What would you do as a citizen in terms of local politics and national politics on education, immigration, war, peace, social justice?
Stephen Shafarman.
Yes.
It was a pleasure speaking to you. Keep up the great work.
I will.
Make sure that we get basic.
I'm doing my best, because we should all have it, and it will create a much more just and sustainable world.
Thank you so kindly for being with Politics Done Right. Folks, Politics Done Right. Okay, folks, that was Mr. Sherman. Now we have John Atlas. John Atlas is the author of Seeds of Change that inspired the film Acorn. And I don't know, for those of you who lived in those days, how the Republicans really came to the attack of Acorn. Acorn being that organization that did its best to get folks in the inner cities and elsewhere to register to vote and help them to vote, among many other things that it did. But anyway, it was the Republicans pretty much got it out of business. But anyhow, without further ado, here is John Atlas, and he's going to explain all about that.
So I do a
Well, this is Politics Done Right, Egberto Willis, and I'm back again. Now we're speaking to John Atlas. And who is John Atlas? John Atlas is the author of the book called Seeds of Change, which inspired the film called Acorn of the Firestorm. Let me tell you something, folks. I don't know how many of you remember the story about Acorn. I don't know how many of you remembered how the Republican Party made a mockery out of truth when that particular organization that did much good, helped voter registration and much more, how much they did to destroy it, and with that, destroying much of voter registrations in many parts of the country. Well, here is a person who wrote about it, who wrote the truth about it. John Atlas, talk to me.
Well, the story of the book that I wrote was a very dramatic story, which became emblematic of a lot of what America turned out to be 10 years later, or 8 years later, I should say. I wrote the book in 2010. I followed the group, immersed myself in them, and for 30 some years I had been active in the world of social justice. I was a legal services lawyer. I helped build community-based organizations, tenant movement, citizen action I was involved with, and I saw myself on the front lines. And in 2003, I thought, what did people like from my generation actually accomplish? Was it 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, or was it 2 steps forward and we were beginning to accomplish? And I looked for a group that might symbolize what had been going on since the 70s. And the group that I thought I would go for was Acorn, because I heard they were doing good things and winning victories, very hard victories for poor people, working people. And so I immersed myself in that organization in 2003 and followed them more or less on and off, but almost literally immersed them. I was at their board meetings, staff meetings. I interviewed dozens of people, followed their actions. You get the picture. Very much involved with them, read their internal emails. I mean, I really tried to understand the group. And what I discovered was the group was amazing. I mean, I went to their first staff meeting, and I don't know if you know about do you know about groups that are fighting hard fights, like fighting poverty? You go to their office and they'll say, I'm a national organization, I'm in DC, we're fighting poverty, and they have a staff of 5 people. And I go, well, you can't really do that. But when I went to their first staff meeting, there was over 500 staff. And I thought, oh, this could be interesting. This could be real. So that's the beginning. I wrote the book. I'm going to quickly summarize. It was finished in 2010. I did a book tour, and my son was paying attention because he's a filmmaker. He's a very successful filmmaker. His first film was an award-winning filmmaker. One's on Netflix. It's called Sour Grapes. And he said, I want to make a film that's inspired by your book. And he had a partner, Sam Pollard, a very famous African-American filmmaker, and they collaborated on this film, and I was inspired it.
Well, that is great. Now, tell us in a short version of the Acorn story, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so a short version of the Acorn story goes like this. 1970s. The 60s are over. A lot of the activists of the 60s were trying to figure out, what do we do now? One guy named Wade Rathke, who was working for the Welfare Rights Organization. You know what that was? Maybe people don't know what the Welfare Rights Organization is, but real briefly, it was an organization that tried to organize welfare people. And it was fairly successful, but they weren't getting that far. They were winning victories and winning 1, losing 3. So he said, what we need is a multi-issue organization, an organization that represented the poor, the working class, and the middle class. And it was not just the one group. It was black and white and multi-ethnic, multiracial, cross-class lines, and bring them together and build a huge organization. So that was his dream. This is a quest story. And he, for the next 35, 40 years, gathered around him some of the most talented organizers I've ever seen, and a staff, they're very talented people, and leaders from the communities. They were able to mobilize people largely. And largely what they did, which was so different, is instead of telling them what they should do, they went and knocked on people's doors and said, what's happening in your community? And people would say, I got garbage and right by the house, nobody picks up the garbage, or there's stoplight. We need a lot of stoplight in signs. We had several accidents. Or we need better wages. Whatever it was, they would then organize around, bring in other people. People paid dues for their organization, and they built from the grassroots up.
What happened now that
and they won all sorts of big victories. I mean, I'm talking about like winning a national increase in the national minimum wage.
But tell us about the destruction of Acorn
So now they've won all these victories. They've created a lot of enemies, corporations that pay minimum wage, banks that want to discriminate against people. You name it, they alienated them. And so for years they were like people would be attacked. But then what they really got people scared, that is the Republican Party, when they started registering, not just registering a few, but millions.
Right.
And when you're registering millions of young, minority, poor people who vote Democratic, you're scaring the bejesus out of Republicans, big business, and everybody. That's when they went after attack. So they tried to discredit Acorn, saying they weren't registering voters; they were committing voter fraud, and they manufactured a true story, what looked like a true story, that they were registering the Dallas Cowboys and other non-existent people, and the internet went wild. Fox News went wild. CNN picked up the story. Everybody was saying the same thing.
Democrats did what they always did. Instead of fighting for Acorn, everybody caved.
They, unlike the right that circles the wagons to protect them, the left circled the wagons and shot in.
Exactly.
And so they were not getting a lot of support from their allies.
And now we know that it was all a fallacy. Now we know we had a party that didn't defend them, and that's what you write about, and that is what came out in
That
the
comes out in the film, but
that
the
comes
film
out
is
in the
very, it's different from the book, and it's quite dramatic.
Well, that's
And there'll be things that surprise you, even if you think you know the story.
I trust that you will. So, folks, where can they get your book?
The book you can buy, you can get it at any store, but you're going to have to order it now. It was written in 2000, but it's available, still widely available. Amazon, everywhere else, Kindle, iBooks.
Well, look, John, I have to leave now.
And the film is also available on iTunes, and if you go on the internet, you'll see.
You'll see it over. John Atlas, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
Yes,
Thank you so kindly for being here.
yes.
It's good that you wrote that book because I think it needed to be codified exactly what these guys did. To
Yes,
Acorn.
yes.
You did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a
have a
great,
wonderful
it
day.
was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, the next person that's showing up, and we have to go a little quicker here to make sure that we can fit all of these in here. Angelina Lawson, she proved that in her race for school district that a progressive can win in a district that one should not win in. This is her story. This is Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies, and today, again, I have a very special guest because you guys know what I speak about all of the time. We are progressives, and if we speak our values, we win because we're speaking to the people. I'm here today with Angelina Lawson. Angelina is from Kansas.
I am.
And Angelina, you won in a very conservative area a trustee position. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first and tell us how you did it?
Sure. I have a background in clinical psychology. We moved to Kansas about 8 years ago, and suddenly the public education system was getting under attack. And my son was going into the kindergarten district, kindergarten time, and so I really wanted to fight for public education because the funding for that was going away under Governor Brownback. He had done a tax experiment, and all LLCs and business owners did not have to pay any taxes, so our infrastructure was really crumbling. I ran for state house in that district, at one of the districts, 39. It was a very difficult district. It wasn't something that was going to be a win. 44 at best. I came in at 36%, so that actually showed me it was a lot redder.
Right.
And after that, so I knew that I had to work hard and for up ticket. Hillary was on that ballot, and so I worked for her, and I worked for everyone else in Congress and Senate. And then after that, when Trump got elected, he started going after Pell Grants. And my history getting into education after high school was only through Pell Grants.
Exactly.
So that was something that hit home for me, that I wanted to make sure other people had that opportunity as well. And I felt that it was going away. So I wanted to have a seat at the table to be able to advocate for people who have been through the community college. And when I looked at the trustees that were currently sitting there, there's 7 of them, not one of them have ever been through a community college. So I put my name on the ballot, and I ran. I knocked 27,000 doors. I ran out to the rural areas where people had never been before. I knocked every single door I could possibly get across to. And there were so many people that came to me and just said, I've never had anybody come to my door. You're the first person. And that was really sad for me. So I let them know what I stood for. I wanted guns off campuses. Right now in Kansas, you can conceal carry on college campuses. So we were about 6 months into that new bill, and that was really concerning to me. I wanted to make sure that our campuses were safe. We had the Me Too movement, so that concerned me as well with Title IX issues. I had Planned Parenthood endorsements, I had the union endorsements, I had lots of federal, state house reps as endorsing me, as well as local neighbors, and just talking to the people at the door authentically.
Now, what I have always said is, if you want to make change, you can't sit back and say, I wish somebody would do something about it. I wish somebody else would stand up and do it. That other person has to be you. And what made your story so compelling to me is that you saw a problem and you didn't say, what else is somebody supposed to do? You went ahead and did it. But not only did you do it, isn't it true that you were outspent by a bunch?
Oh, yeah.
By how much?
I would say there were campaigns that spent 50,000, and I think I came in between 14 and 18, if I look back at my campaign.
So they lapped you in the amount of money they spent.
Oh, they did a group coordinated campaign with 4 men had come together. So not only some of them had 50,000, they grouped together. So it was high how much money they had.
And I think one of the things that you're teaching folks right now is, if you go to the people, if you go to the people with a message for the people will ultimately reward you.
Right. So they outspent me, but I met the voters. And then I went to the doors. And even though we disagreed on some of the issues, some of the voters wanted to have guns on campus. And I just explained why I didn't want guns on campus. I explained my reasoning for having Planned Parenthood endorsement, while I sought that out, because I wanted to make sure that we have our proper Title IX, because Betsy DeVos was going after that. And I wanted to make sure that our campus was safe, that we had options and ability to be diverse on our board as well, because we had 7 trustees and 1 woman currently sitting, so I would be the second woman. And in my ballot, there was 7 candidates, and I was the only woman. So for me, it was also making sure that women had a seat at the table, but more importantly, too, is someone who actually has been through a community college and graduated from that has a different kind of voice than someone who's been through a 4-year. And I see some of that in their policies that they're putting forward. It's just they don't understand the value of faculty unions. They don't understand the value of protection of workers, because they come from a different point of view.
Well, look, I think that what you've done is exceptional. I can only see you moving further from here, because I tell you what, we need people in red country who are not scared to put out the progressive values, because the progressive values in fact are the values that most Americans are seeking, and we need folks who are bold enough to stand with their values irrespective of where they are. So for that, I want to thank you first of all, Angelina. You've done a great job. Keep it up. And we are expecting a whole lot more from you.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Folks, well, Facebook Live, welcome back to Netroots Nation 2018. We are here with another, what I call someone that's going to be a growing star in the progressive movement. We are here with Deaven, Rector with DC Vote. And I tell you, one of the things that really impressed me the most, why he came over to the table and I said, we want to have other people see you. He's a 19-year-old young man.
Yeah, from Morehouse College, Atlanta, Georgia.
Right, and he is doing what we've been telling the young people to do. So tell me, first of all, your full name.
Well, my name is Deaven Rector from Los Angeles, California, more specifically Gardena, California. And I just finished my freshman year at Morales College in the city of Atlanta, Georgia.
Now, what got you involved in politics?
Well, the number one thing that got me involved in politics was the fact that I saw the problems in our community, in our country, especially our current political climate, and I came to the realization that if no one's going to do it, you might as well do it yourself, you know? And so why sit back and allow this chaos to happen? Or even sometimes it might not even be chaos. It might be something that the community does not accept. Like currently right now, our executive branch is taking away funding from our education programs. Why on earth would you do that? You see that we're near the bottom half of our math scores. And we see our kids struggling. There's a big gap between private and public schools. Not everyone can afford private school. So why on earth would you take away the funds for education? And that's just one example.
You just gave an important statement. You said if nobody's going to do it, it had to be you.
Right.
And that's in effect what you're saying. And that is something that we've started promoting here, not only at Politics Done Right, at KPFT 90.1, and trying to get people engaged into our body politic. Because the most important thing is if you don't do it, nobody else will, because the other person that you're waiting to do it is thinking the same thing that you are.
Exactly.
You have to be the one. Now, I was very impressed that somebody of your age had and was aware of all the issues that are currently affecting the country. Now, you were earlier speaking to me and you were mentioning something about minorities.
Right.
Explain that.
And so, all right, as you guys know, I'm an African American, and first and foremost, our history has been erased. So a couple of our things that we consider our culture actually aren't our culture. And so we were progressing as a community in the 60s and the 70s, but during the cocaine epidemic kind of held us back during the 80s. And so we have never fully recovered from that. And so in the 60s, 70s, you know, we had our Malcolm X's, our Martin Luther Kings. Even prior to that, we had our Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, W. Du Bois. And during the 90s, I even say I'll throw up Tupac in there, because even though he had a different lifestyle, but at the same time, he was still inspiration to our community. As someone coming out of the so-called ghetto, definition of ghetto is actually a place where minorities live. It's not even some type of slum. It's just a place for minorities. And our generation no longer has that leader. Obama was that. By the same time, Obama is a politician. There's only so much you can do as the president of the United States. You can't just look out for your community, you know, as the president of the United States. And so I just want to give the people in my communities an inspiration that you are more than just, you know, an athlete, more than just a rapper. You can do so many things. You can go out and actually change the world. You can mold it. That's the beauty of democracy. You can actually mold it into your vision. And I just want to be an inspiration to those, to be honest with you, to the kids.
Well, that you are.
Yeah.
That you're. In fact, I think that is what a lot more young people need to see that, so that they themselves would like to be. I have a theory in that if the old folks continue to run things, there's nothing good happening to the young folks.
Right.
So I mean, if everybody's engaged, everybody gets a piece of the pie. Everybody gets mentioned. Everybody gets what's due them.
Right.
Now, in closing, tell us a little bit about DC Vote.
All right. So DC Vote is basically a progressive act and for DC to become, you know, the 51st state in America. A lot of people don't know that DC is actually not a state. We have no representatives. And so we in the community would like to bring DC to the 51st state. For example, DC passed a law to legalize marijuana. But since marijuana is still illegal on the federal grounds, they cannot tax it, and they cannot make money from it. And so, for example, Colorado sends all their money they make from marijuana into their schools. That is $1 billion. Right. Marijuana is a $1 billion industry. DC wants to take the same steps towards the Colorado plan and to put their money into schools, because, you know, their funding were taken away from their schools. So they want to repel that. And as long as they're not a state, they cannot do that.
They don't have the power.
They don't have the power to do so.
Their legislature is not a state legislature, but a Congress of the United States.
Exactly. And actually, DC has been trying to become a state since, honestly, 1776, believe it or not. Sadly.
Well, Deaven, Rector, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I know I'll be seeing a whole lot of good things from you, my friend.
You will. I won't stop until the job is done.
Exactly. That's what I want to hear. You have a great day, my friend.
You too.
Facebook Live. Folks, that was the final interview that I'll have for today. I had another one, but time is a constraint. Please, folks, remember that this is a progressive show that needs your support. Please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Be a supporter of a independent media. We need your support now more than ever. You're not going to get this type of news. You're not going to get these interviews. You're not going to get all of this from the mainstream media. Why? Because it's not in their interest. They want to control the message as they always has. Or they always have, and the reality is you should be in control of getting the truth. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I'm going to end this, baby. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.